Hello and welcome YouTube. This is TSR Dion of the 409th. So, as promised in my Napoleon Total War guide, I'm going to be showing this full battle here on Pyramids. This is a 2v2 Pyramids. I'm playing as the Ottoman Empire. My partner EE is playing as Russia. Our opponents is another Ottomans. His name is Dutchman. He's playing as the Ottomans facing EE. And my opponent in front of me is playing as Austria. His name is El Turo. I know Dutchman, but I don't know El Turo. But this is going to be a perfect battle to explain the faction of Ottomans, the map Pyramids, and some basic primers on the fundamentals of team play, particularly 2 versus 2 team play. And this is going to be a quite interesting battle. So without further ado, let us get right into this battle. So the faction Ottomans is a faction specially equipped to handle desert maps like this one. Pyramids, Syrian Ridge, there's other maps, any map that is desert-like. Ottomans excels on those maps because they gain a passive resistance to fatigue on desert maps above other factions on those same maps. So this is a thing that gives Ottomans a significant advantage. And so this is the primary reason why you want to use Ottomans. Now you see EE is going in against these Ottoman mounted cadet cavalry with his mounted Jaegers with his Russian cavalry. And this is not a good move for EE to do for several reasons, because as I mentioned, Ottoman has an advantage on desert maps like Pyramids. But Russia has a disadvantage on these same maps. Russia actually gets a debuff on these desert maps. So, Ottomans already has a huge advantage over normal factions that don't get like a huge debuff. But Russia gets an even larger debuff on these same maps. So he's being very aggressive with his cavalry. He's at a disadvantage doing this. This already isn't like the best thing to do with the cavalry, regardless of these debuffs. But just to drive home how, catastrophic this is right here that EE is doing. He not only is like at a disadvantage with what he's doing, but, this isn't really the best thing for him to be doing here. He's going to lose all of his cavalry in this engagement. And Dutchman is going to still have all of his remaining. You see, I recognize that. I moved up my lines to try and support EE here. Try and at least kill some of that cavalry, because it is completely unacceptable for EE to lose all of his cavalry here. Meanwhile, Dutchman is still going to have all of his cavalry. And this is going to be very, very important later on in this battle. The fact that this happened, this is going to lead to a dire consequence later in this battle. But just so we're clear here, on a teamwork perspective, you don't want to be wasting your cavalry like this, because you're gonna need to match your opponent that's directly in front of you. And a lot of people would tell you, or a lot of people have different theories about what's good as far as like being a good teammate. My opinion about being a good teammate generally is that you need to be able to lock down your own opponent. So EE lost all of his cavalry right there at the beginning of the game. And Dutchman still has his cavalry left. That's going to significantly impede EE's ability to lock down Dutchman, which means this is already going to hinder the teamwork between us, because now I'm going to have to worry about Dutchman potentially doing something with his cavalry against me as I go against my opponent here. Now, here's where I tell you a bit about Ottomans. So, Ottomans is mostly an aggressive faction. They don't have the best light infantry. They don't have guard infantry, which is a particularly bad thing for Ottomans. That doesn't help, but it also doesn't significantly hurt Ottomans, because Ottoman light infantry are, I would argue, the second best light infantry in the game. Okay, that's not a thing to scoff at, really. That is significant. Their light infantry isn't great, but it's also not bad. They serve a role just like France's light infantry do. So you can use Ottoman light infantry to kind of hold and make your initial front like I'm doing here. So I'm using my light infantry to skirmish with him before I really lean into an attack to kind of see where I need to go in at, where he's vulnerable, and to pepper him a bit to weaken him for the attack. But Ottomans is primarily a aggressive faction. You see him counterattacking with his cavalry here. I'm going to retreat my light infantry because even though my light infantry aren't my primary unit, I still don't want to lose them because Ottoman light infantry can still do a good bit of damage. You know, they aren't completely useless. I wouldn't say they're expendable. You don't want to just lose your light infantry for free. But I'm just saying, Ottoman light infantry, they aren't like the best thing in the world, but because Ottomans doesn't have elite infantry, you do still need to take care of your light infantry with Ottomans. You do need your light infantry with Ottomans due to the fact that Ottomans doesn't have elite infantry. Now, Ottomans has two primary tools for which it will carry out attacks. First of all, Ottoman cavalry is among the best of the game easily. I would argue Ottomans has the second best cavalry in the game. I would definitely argue that because their shooter calves are very, very good. They also have arguably the best lancers in the game. I mean, some people would say French lancers are better. Some people would say Ottoman lancers are better. You could really go either way on that. But either way, whichever way you want to slice it, Ottomans has fucking good lancers, okay? They have really good lancers. They have sit-by calves, which are, you know, they're cheap. They're like a heavy calf unit, but they actually have lancers, so that's actually a unique unit in the game that only Ottomans really has. And they've also got the slaughter guard, which are like a better version of the sit-by calf, but personally, I would only use the sit-by calf because they already are a bit on the pricey side. But because Ottomans doesn't have elite infantry, you also have a bit of money to throw at stuff like this. Now, Ottomans also has a very unique melee infantry unit called the Scimitar Janissaries. Now, these guys, you put a few chevrons on them, you put a few rank units on them, they do very significant damage in melee against light infantry. Very, very significant. They are a unit that is... oh my god. Scimitar Janissaries, they are a very powerful unit, okay? Now, they are very vulnerable to cavalry, however. So that is the weakness of Scimitar Janissaries. But if you can get them in on enemy light infantry without them getting disrupted by cavalry, they will do a significant amount of damage. They will absolutely rip apart light infantry, elite infantry, grenadiers, light infantry. It doesn't matter. If you can get these guys in, they will do significant damage. Now, you see me going in on the attack right now. Now, I'm about to prove it to you how good Ottomans is on the attack. This massive wave of cavalry that I've got here sitting in on him, I'm dropping the hammer on this guy. Right after that, I've got the Scimitar Janissaries coming in. And Dutchman is actually going to do some very good teamwork here with his ally. And he's going to disrupt my Scimitar Janissaries here with his cavalry. See, this is a direct consequence of EE wasting his cavalry at the beginning of the game because, you know, Dutchman still has his cavalry and now he used it to disrupt my Scimitar Janissaries. But no matter, because Ottomans is such a powerful faction on the attack and because I've done a good job pushing this attack, I'm still going to be able to break through here. And I'm still going to dig into my opponent with my cavalry and the Janissaries mostly still intact. I'm going to also run my general up at some point to hold down the morale. You see, this is what I'm doing right now. I moved in my general. And there you go. I gave my units the boost. Now my units are going to really start to dig into him. My cavalry, I'm bouncing off deep into his formation. And I'm doing a lot of damage. Bam! Right there, I got a full charge off with sit-by calves against his line infantry right there at the front while my cavalry are dug deep into his rear. EE is going to send his line infantry over to join the attack, which personally I wish he would instead turn those light infantry around to guard my flank because I don't really need EE coming in here in the way. I've got this attack under control here. This is all in the back. This is all under control. I don't really need EE to come in here, really getting away like he's doing, especially since he's coming in here and charging, and melee charging. Don't really need that, but okay. You know, this is going to lead to some consequences later on because remember, I said Dutchman's cavalry is still alive here. Now, if you look at the map, Dutchman has ran his cavalry around EE at this stage. This is why I said I would have preferred EE use his line infantry to guard my flank instead of coming in here, getting in the way. But look at my opponent. Look at Austria. Austria is basically fucking dead at this point. He's been like eviscerated by this Ottoman charge, and I've still got plenty of gasoline left for another attack here. I'm far from done as far as like being able to push, and my opponent is already basically dead. So I just proved to you here exactly how much attack power Ottomans has. Ottomans, even though it is a minor nation technically, it is an extremely powerful nation on the attack. You see, I'm moving in my next units of cavalry here. I've got plenty of cavalry left, plenty of units left, and my opponent is basically fucking dead. But you see, Dutchman here is moving in with his cavalry. Now, here's where I tell you that EE really let me down as far as the teamwork, because good teamwork here would be for EE to let me know that Dutchman is coming in here with his cavalry behind me. I'm completely unaware that Dutchman is coming because I'm focused on the attack. You see, I've done a very good job on the attack. I'm completely focused on that. But EE doesn't let me know that Dutchman is coming up behind me. You need to communicate with your teammate in team games, needless to say. But here I go. Here's my second wave. I'm going to finish off Ottomans here with this next wave. I'm also going to dig in here against Dutchman because Dutchman is doing a good job of supporting his teammate, but EE isn't really doing a good job of supporting me. Dutchman, because EE isn't really watching my back here, Dutchman is here, right in behind me. He's going to start charging into my rear, which is going to catch me completely by surprise. Here we go. Dutchman is going to get my general. He's going to...
Mission failed.
One of my flanks there with the cavalry he charged in my rear. He's going to charge basically almost all of my units in the rear. I'm not going to hit square because I don't know he's there. EE didn't tell me he was there. And EE also didn't guard my flank. You know, that's going to lead to some dire consequences for me, let's just say. I cannot maintain my momentum here now that I've lost my general. My units are going to start the rout. And this is one of the big weaknesses to Ottomans. Ottomans is very good on the attack, but Ottomans cannot attack without its general. Ottomans has very weak morale that will very quickly start to make itself known once you lose your general. Once Ottomans loses its general, that's it. Ottoman units are going to start to break. What I needed EE to do here was to push against Dutchman. Good teamwork here would have been either for EE to guard my flank or to push against Dutchman. But because he did neither, okay, that gave Dutchman the opportunity to send units over here to fight me and to charge me in the rear. So that's two things that EE kind of let me down on. My army basically disintegrated here. And this was completely unnecessary, okay? Now, I'm not trying to throw shade at EE here. I'm not trying to say, oh, EE, you're a freaking noob. EE, you let me down. I'm not trying to do that. But I'm just saying this to illustrate to you what good teamwork looks like and why good teamwork is important. Good teamwork is communication. The good teamwork is putting pressure on your opponent. EE did neither. So this led to the consequence of my army being disintegrated in a matter of just a couple minutes. I had a completely healthy army that would have won the game very, very quickly here had EE done his part, but because EE did neither, you know, now Dutchman actually turned this around into a situation where now he can actually win. So I'm completely out of the game now. If we're gonna win this, EE is gonna have to win this. It's basically what it's come down to here. And so this is no longer a team game. This is now a 1 versus 1 between EE and Dutchman. Right, so you can imagine how pissed I am at this stage. You know, I don't want to lose to Dutchman. I know Dutchman. Dutchman is a former 409th member. I kind of didn't like him being in the clan, so he's not in the clan anymore. And you know, Dutchman, he's a very unscrupulous player. Like, you just saw what he did there. He kind of does things like this, which, you know, he's a very easy player to deal with if you just push him, you just put pressure on him. EE did not put enough pressure on him. This is why Dutchman is essentially running wild here. You know, I'm basically telling EE, bro, you better defeat Dutchman or else I'm going to be pretty mad. And fortunately, EE does have the force necessary to defeat Dutchman. Also, you know, even though Dutchman is a bit of an unscrupulous player, I wouldn't say he's a good player. He's not like an overwhelmingly skilled player. So he's a very beatable player, I'd say. So I'm like, bro, EE, please beat this guy, okay? So I think I'm gonna have to skip ahead here in a little bit because not much goes on here. Maybe I'll skip over this, maybe I won't. But basically what's gonna happen here is, because EE is using Russia on a desert map, he's getting pretty severe fatigue penalties. His army is exhausted from not marching very far. Meanwhile, Dutchman's army is like in tip-top shape. So EE, even though he has a larger army, he's gonna have some disadvantages facing Dutchman here. And Austria does have a couple units left here too. He has a couple very depleted units here, so technically EE is playing 2 versus 2, 2 versus 1, but those Austrian units are so badly depleted. You know, like, I was gonna completely destroy Austria pretty easily, but Dutchman kind of caught me in the nick of time to keep a couple Austrian units there in the fight. But those Austrian units are so insignificant that it's really not even worth taking them into account at this point. It's basically curtains for Austria, pretty much. He's not going to do much here. He's not going to contribute much here. So, yeah, this is the situation. EE is going to have to retreat briefly here because, like I told him, like, you know, you're at a disadvantage. You're Russia on a desert map. And you're up against Ottomans. You know, Dutchman's army is in tip-top shape here. Your army is basically about to pass out. Your army needs a fucking Gatorade right now. Like, you know, if you don't keep your army from being too fatigued, if you have an army that's too fatigued, what's going to happen is your units are going to move like entirely too slow to do anything effectively. Also, like, exhausted units, they have lower morale, they have lower melee stats, I believe. They don't perform very well if your army's fatigued. Like, fatigue will really do a number in on your army, pretty much. You don't want to be fighting with a fatigued army. So I told EE, you're going to need to fall back a bit, you're going to need to rest your men. And Dutchman, he's going to try to follow him out here because Dutchman's a bit overconfident. I'm pretty sure Dutchman's feeling like he's got a big dick here. He's feeling pretty good. He's feeling pretty confident, like, hee hee ha ha, I just completely mass routed Emperor Dion's army. I'm such a pro. I'm so good here. I'm such hot shit. Dutchman's feeling confident after that. So Dutchman, for a little bit, is actually gonna get out of his unscrupulous tactics that he loves to do and actually follow EE out into the open desert a bit. You know, he's gonna try to push something here because he's feeling confident enough to do so. So yeah, let's just sit here and watch what goes on here. Again, EE is just gonna sit here and rest. He needs to rest. So one thing I'm gonna tell you right here too, this is a thing that people don't realize in Napoleon Total War, but light infantry units don't rest if they're in light infantry formation. So you've actually got to switch light infantry back to their line formation like this in order for them to recover their stamina. So that's what I told EE to do. You have to do that or else your light infantry will never recover their stamina. Dutchman is going to push here with his light infantry. Now remember how I told you Dutchman is not really a good player? You're going to see why I said that here in a second here. So watch this. Yeah, you see there? You see there? Freaking Dutchman, he had a significant advantage there. His army was much better rested than EE's. He was on the attack. He had a slight advantage in light infantry. You know, Ottoman light infantry are not the best, but they are better than Russian light infantry, that's for sure. But even with that advantage, EE was still able to quickly move his units back into combat formation. He routed one of Dutchman's light infantry in a skirmish there. That is going to completely break Dutchman's confidence, his fragile little confidence. Dutchman ain't feeling so confident anymore, okay? Dutchman's going to run back to the hill. He's going to be like, oh, fuck this. I'm going to go back to my little unscrupulous tactics. I'm going to get my ass on the hill and just basically spend the rest of the battle running away because, holy shit, I don't actually know how to play that good. And, you know, maybe I'm being a bit mean to Dutchman, but trust me, Dutchman's a bit of an asshole. You know, I've had quite a few verbal altercations with Dutchman. He's that type of guy. He's a bit of a narcissist himself, so I try to talk him down. I try to take him down a peg by the way I talk about him. So don't worry yourself about the way I'm kind of insulting him here in this video. Trust me, Dutchman is arrogant himself. So yeah, Dutchman, he's going to run back. He's going to spend the rest of the battle running here. Even though he's got an advantage, like I said, like Ottomans is a very good faction on these desert maps. He's going to spend the rest of the battle basically running away now. You know, if Dutchman were half as good of a player as he should be, is considering how long he's played the game, he'd be able to use this army here to kind of outmaneuver EE here and be able to get the win on the attack. But nope. Dutchman ain't going to do that. He's going to run away. He's going to get his ass back on the hill. He's going to try to kite EE to death in order to get the victory. He's going to try to cheese out the victory here. Now, that Austria player, I actually kind of respect that Austria player here because that Austria player is actually going to stand his ground here on the hill. Even though he stands no chance, that Austria player is going to stand his ground. He's going to fight it out. He's going to use his last units and basically be taken out of the game fighting. So I'll give props to the Austria player, but I will not give props to Dutchman. You know, Dutchman, he even tried to sit there and hold out in the little forest there, although that's not really a forest. That did not work out very well for him at all. He's gonna go on the run again. The Austria player is gonna sit here, fight it out, and die basically against these Russian infantry. These are Moscow musketeers too, so they have a pretty par advantage here with the Austrian line infantry. There you go. Those units aren't going to come back from routing. Too few men of them. He lost his general on top of that. So that's one Austrian lying down. The other one's going to be just as easy to take out. EE is going to be forced to continuously go on the attack here against running ass Dutchman. You know, the flying Dutchman is going to stay true to his name and be on the fucking flight for the rest of the game. Don't know what Dutchman think he's going to do here. He is going to put up a little stand here, but that's not really a wise little stand that he's making here. You know, EE is going to pick off his lines with his light infantry. yeah, there's not really much to say here. I don't know why Dutchman decided to commit to that little stand there. Like, he already ran away. He's gonna try to commit to this unfavorable stand here for whatever reason. I don't know why he did that, but here we go. Yeah, Dutchman's gonna get the worst end of that engagement. He's gonna run again. He's gonna get shot in the back while he runs too. I mean, you can't really afford that. You know, like I said, Dutchman could have won this. Dutchman definitely could have won this, but I don't know what the fuck he's doing. But I'm glad he didn't do the thing that he needed to do, because, like, I would be fucking pissed if I had lost to Dutchman in this game. You know, and I let EE know that fact. Yeah, EE is going to continue to push. He's going to come up on the hill. He's going to engage him on the hill. Yeah, this battle is no longer exciting anymore because, you know, the main part of the battle is done. The rest of the battle is just basically Dutchman running away. And, you know, but I feel like this part of the battle is important to highlight the reason why running away when it's clear you're going to lose is not good. This is not fun. This is not a good battle anymore. This is just basically like Dutchman trying to preserve his ego here, pretty much. There's no advantage to running away like this, because it's pretty clear that Dutchman's gonna lose. Dutchman doesn't have the skill to win this, and he's just delaying the inevitable with what he is doing. So, in my Total War guide, I said how it is a common etiquette to not run away like this. Dutchman is one of these players that does not follow etiquette, okay? Dutchman is breaking etiquette by running away like this. He's essentially wasting my time. He's wasting EE's time. The Austrian player used his last unit to stand and fight, so the Austrian player is already out of the game. The Austrian player did the right thing. But it's Dutchman here that is breaking etiquette and being an asshole, basically. And he's just constantly running away, despite the fact that he doesn't have the skill to win this, and he isn't going to be able to win this with what he's currently doing. You know, Dutchman's just basically being an asshole here. Now, I can use this opportunity to tell you a little bit about pyramids. Basically, on pyramids, most of the time, the fighting will take place over that hill that you saw us do most of the fighting on. But there's another element to pyramids too, where, like everywhere else on pyramids, there's these sand dunes, and it's very easy to have your unit shooting into those sand dunes rather than shooting the enemy on pyramids. Like, you have to really pay attention to the terrain because of these sand dunes. These sand dunes will impede your firing quite often if you're not paying attention. Okay, so you have to be careful on pyramids when you're out in the open desert, because those sand dunes, they're kind of hard to pinpoint if you're not paying precise attention to where they're located and where your men are firing. So that is a little tactical perk to pyramids. If you just pay attention to the terrain a bit more, you can manipulate those sand dunes to create barriers for your army to shield them from enemy fire, and you can navigate those sand dunes and use them to your tactical advantage. So most of the time on pyramids, the fighting is either going to take place around that hill, it's going to take place in the open desert, around those sand dunes. There's lots and lots of sand dunes. There's a countless number of them. But also, a big thing on pyramids is the host site of pyramids has a slight slope right there. So if the host decides to cap, or the host retreats into that spawn zone, it's actually very, very difficult to dislodge a player that is in that spawn zone on the host site because of that gentle slope going up there. It's kind of hard to recognize, but it is a gentle slope, and you will be at a disadvantage if you try to attack up that slope on the host site. and some players kind of use that to their advantage. Um, Now, Dutchman retreated to a sand dune actually that's on the non-host side, so he's already retreated like behind his spawn zone now. There's this little sand dune behind the spawn zone. Dutchman has retreated there, and you know, he's not gonna win this, but he's ran all the way behind his own spawn zone here. Basically, I don't know. There's no reason why you want to do this. You're just wasting our time doing this. But I think I've got the battle sped up too. Basically, because I was fucking fed up, even just watching this on a replay. So this is actually like a lot longer than what you're seeing here. But this is a very scumbag thing to do. Dutchman didn't even stand and fight after that engagement there at the sand dune. He continued to run away all the way to like a corner of the map that people rarely go to. There's like this little forest on the right side of pyramids right here. Dutchman fell back to that forest even, which people rarely go there. But because Dutchman is like continuously running away, he's now in this forest, this slight forest. I don't think it's enough to really offer you cover from gunfire, but Dutchman ran there, But the battle's gonna more or less end here. It's definitely over now. Dutchman, like I say, he's an unscrupulous player. He'll run away like this. He'll waste your time, and that's GG. There you go. Anyways, that was a pretty good battle. Pretty annoying battle, definitely. I wish EE had given me a little bit more better teamwork there. Had let me known about Dutchman, or at least guarded my flank. This battle would have ended a lot sooner had that went on, so that was not the best teamwork on his part. Dutchman actually did good teamwork with his ally, though, and that was enough to prolong the battle to where he could spend all this time running away. And because of that, Dutchman actually cheesed out more kills than he would otherwise have. So, there's that. Anyways, that's the battle. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys later, and later.